All right, here's the second question we got, and this one is a throwback to our last series about working on starting good habits and changing our bad habits. And the question was, what is a first step in changing a bad habit? And this person gave us a specific habit that they're struggling with that they want to get over. So I think we can speak to this habit, but I think hopefully we can add some generic kinds of stuff that'll help with pretty much any bad habit. But this specific bad habit, he says, my habit is I keep talking over people. And he wants to stop this bad habit. So my first thought on this, I'll just jump in first. My first thought on this is it sounds a lot like a habit that I had to stop in my marriage. And here's how it goes. If I'm a typical guy, and whenever my wife comes to me with something and talks to me about things, I really want to jump in and fix it. I want to jump in and tell her the right answer and the problem. I want to solve the problem as soon as possible. And so I was also finding that I was jumping ahead of when she wasn't even done talking. And a lot of times she just really needed a sounding board. She's more of an external processor, and so she needed to just hear it out loud, talk it over with me, and us work to the solution together. And so when I realized I was doing that, I wanted to stop doing that. I actually asked her to help me. I said, hey, look, I don't want to do that anymore because I realize that that's frustrating to you. And so would you tell me when you notice that I'm doing that? I give you permission to speak into my life and tell me that that's something I'm doing, and I will do my best to stop that and not jump in and give you plenty of time to talk. And it helped me. So I would say to you, if you've got some people that you probably know, there are some people that I just do this with more than others. Invite them into your effort to stop the habit and say, hey, I'm trying to quit this habit. I don't want to do this anymore. I tend to do this when you're around. Help me. Point this out to me. I'm an open book kind of thing. And we talked about involving other people in our habit creation. That's just one way of doing that. So that was my first thought on it.
I agree, and I think it sounds like he's already done it, and you certainly did. I think the first step in stopping anything that you want to stop is to make sure you have named for sure what you want to stop, instead of often I want to stop the consequences of my bad behavior instead of the behavior itself. So I don't want to hurt my wife's feeling, or I don't want to be the jerk in the room that I don't want to be that guy I can tell everybody looks at me. And what I want is, I don't really want to control my behavior of having to have the last word or having to have the first word or so I don't ever name what the real problem is. So for me, it's always, I really want this problem to stop, and then I confess it. What I want to do is to be able to sit in a room and not have to have the last say, or not have to have the first say, or any of that kind of stuff.
And the way it came down for me was I realized that I was hard to be married to, and I don't want to be that guy. That's not what I set out to be when I signed up to be a husband. I don't want to make life harder for you. I actually got into this to love you and make life better for you. And so when I finally realized I'm doing that, that's what I'm doing. I want that to end, and this is what I'm doing to cause that to happen. It changed everything for me. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, and I think the thing they're both saying, so to kind of make it general, to your point of making it general for other people, is I think you gotta, and we talked about this a lot in the habits thing, but just to bring it back I gotta identify the kind of person I want to be. Like, what is the person? Is it I want to be a better husband? Is it I want to be a better listener? I want to be more engaged. It's probably not a shock to a lot of people. I also struggle with this, as both the guys said they have. I often, my personality is I like kind of being the person who has the answer or has the solution. I like being in that place in a relationship. And so I've had many people over and again, anytime anyone says anything, you have something to add, or you have an answer, or you have whatever. And I realized, to your point, what I didn't like was I didn't like them saying those things about me. I had to get to a point where I go, but I want to be a person, not just seen as a person who cares. I actually want to be a person who cares. And so one of the things I did is say, okay, I'm going to put a new habit in place, because it's often hard to start, and it talks about this in Atomic Habits, of whenever you try to stop a bad habit, have a new good habit to replace it with, so that you're doing that. One of mine was, I'm going to ask more questions before I inject my thing. So, if it's my wife who's got a problem, because like you said, I think it's typical for a lot of guys, I want to just kind of jump in and fix it instead of going, adding in, so how does it make you feel when they do that or they say that, or, tell me more about the situation, or anything that, and it's not just like, hey, I'm showing you I care,
Right.
but actually trying to genuinely care because I'm putting myself on the back burner. So I think beginning with who's the person I want to be, which should come from not just what is the thing I want to stop, but what is it in me that needs to change? Because there is a dysfunction in me that I always have to have the last word.
Yeah.
There is something that's not healthy that I always have to have the answer. And
I realized even, and we all love Dallas Willard, and there's a part where Dallas says you got to practice the discipline of not having to have the last word. And it's really tough. The illustration I heard somebody tell about Dallas was being in Dallas's classroom. He was a philosophy professor at USC, and some freshman student stood up and basically challenged him openly that he was wrong. So take that in. It's a 19-year-old who's challenging a tenured USC professor, widely renowned as one of the greatest philosophers alive. And as soon as the student got done, Dallas goes, well, that's the end of the class for today. He didn't answer, he didn't correct, and the person said, why do you do that? And he goes, because I'm currently in the state of not having to have the last word. And his thought behind it was, and this has been helpful to me, of I trust that God has a way to fix things without me being the one to fix them. And I often feel like I am God's tool to fix everybody that's standing in front of me, so I have to say everything I think.
Yes. And back to what you were saying with questions, there are a couple of questions that I just made a part of my vocabulary, specifically with my wife, but with people in general as well. I'll just flat out ask when somebody brings something to me, would you like me to help you with this? Or what can I do to help you with this? And if sometimes my wife has said this to me, she said, nothing, I just want you to listen. Okay,
Yeah, that's good.
I will do that. Or sometimes it's like, no, I want you to tell me what you think. Okay, once you've been invited in, well, now we're having a conversation. Before though, if I inserted it, it was unwanted.
That's a really good question, too.
So
That's a really good question.
I'm better at it. If my wife is listening to this, I know I'm not perfect, but
Right.
I am better. So
One thing I know for sure, my wife is not listening to this.
no, that's true.
I don't think mine
My
is either.
wife doesn't know where I work.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah.